At length the negro asked, "Is the left eye of the skull upon the same side as the left hand of the skull, too? 'Cause the skull ain't got not a bit of the hand at all." "Never mind. I got the left eye now. Here the left eye. What must do with it? Let the beetle drop through it as far as the stream will reach. But be careful and not let go of your hold of the stream." "All done, Massa Will. Mighty easy thing for to do. Put the bug through the hole. Look out for him now there below." During this colloquy no portion of Jupiter's person could be seen, but the beetle, which he had suffered to descend, was now visible in the end of the stream, and glistened like a globe of burnished gold in the last rays of the setting sun, some of which still faintly illuminated the eminence upon which we stood. The scarabaeus hung quite clear of any branches, and if any allowed to fall, would have fallen at our feet. Legrand immediately took the scythe and cleared it with a circular space 3 or 4 yards in diameter, just beneath the insect, and having accomplished this, ordered Jupiter to let go of the string and come down from the tree. Driving a peg with great nicety into the ground, at the precise spot where the beetle fell, my friend now produced from his pocket a tape measure, fastening one end of this at that point of the trunk of the tree, which was nearest the peg. He unrolled it till it reached the peg, and then thence further unrolled it in the direction already established by the 2 points of the tree and the peg, for the distance of 50 feet. Jupiter cleared away the brambles with the scythe. At the spot thus attained, the second peg was driven, and about this as a center, a rude circle, about 4 feet in diameter, described. Taking now a spade himself, and giving him one to Jupiter and to me, Legrand begged us to set about digging as quickly as possible. To speak the truth, I had no especial relish for such amusement at any time, and at that particular moment would most willingly have declined it, for the night was coming on, and I felt much fatigued with the exercise already taken. But I saw no mode of escape, and was fearful of disturbing my poor friend's equanimity by a refusal. Could I have depended, indeed, upon Jupiter's aid, I would have had no hesitation in attempting to get the lunatic home by force, but I was too well assured of the old negro's disposition to hope that he would assist me under any circumstances in a personal contest with his master. I made no doubt that the latter had been infected with some of the innumerable southern superstitions about money buried, and that his fantasy had received confirmation by finding of the scarabus, or perhaps by Jupiter's obstinacy in maintaining it to be, quote unquote, a bug of real gold. A mind disposed to lunacy would readily be led away by such suggestions, especially if chiming in with favorite preconceived ideas, and that then I called to mind the poor fellow's speech about the beetle's being, quote unquote, the index of his fortune. Upon the whole, I was sadly vexed and puzzled, but at length I concluded to make a virtue of necessity, to dig with a good will, and thus the sooner to convince the visionary, by ocular demonstration, of the fallacy of the opinions he entertained. The lanterns having been lit, we all fell to work with a zeal worthy a more rational cause. And as the glare fell upon our persons and our implements, I could not help thinking how picturesque a group we composed. And how strange and suspicious in our labors must have appeared to any interloper who, by chance, might have stumbled upon our whereabouts. We dug very steadily for 2 hours. Little was said, and our chief embarrassment lay in the yelpings of the dog, who took exceeding interest in our proceedings. He at length became so obstreperous that we grew fearful of his giving the alarm to some stragglers in the vicinity, or rather this was the apprehension of Legrand. For myself, I should have rejoiced at any interruption which might have enabled me to get the wanderer home. The noise was at length very effectually silenced by Jupiter, who, getting out of his hole with a dogged air of deliberation, tied the brute's mouth up with one of his suspenders, and then returned, with a grave chuckle, to his task. When the time mentioned had expired, we had reached a depth of 5 feet, and yet no signs of any treasure had become manifest. A general pause ensued, and I began to hope that the farce was at an end. Legrand, however, although evidently much disconcerted, wiped his brow thoughtfully and recommenced. We had excavated the entire circle of 4 feet diameter, and now we slightly enlarged the limit and went to farther depth of 2 feet. Still nothing appeared. The gold seeker, whom I sincerely pitied, at length clambered from the pit, with the bitterest disappointment imprinted upon his every feature, and proceeded slowly and reluctantly to put on his coat, which he had thrown off at the beginning of his labor. In the meantime, I made no remark. Jupiter, at a signal from his master, began to gather up the tools. This done, and the dog having been unmuzzled, we turned in profound silence toward home. We had taken perhaps a dozen steps in this direction when, with a loud oath, Legrand strode up to Jupiter and seized him by the collar. An astonished negro opened his eyes and mouth to the full extent, let fall his spades, and fell upon his knees. "You scoundrel!" said Legrand, hissing out the syllables from between his clenched teeth. "You infernal black villain! Speak, I tell you! Answer me this instant, without prevarication. Which is your left eye?" "Oh my golly, Massa Will, ain't this here my left eye for sartin?" roared the terrified Jupiter, placing his hand upon his right organ of vision, and holding it there with desperate pertinacity, as if in immediate dread of his master's attempt at a gouge. "I thought so. I knew it! Hurrah!" vociferated Legrand, letting the negro go, and executing a series of curvets and caracoles, much to the astonishment of his valet, who, arising from his knees, looked mutely from his master to myself, and then from myself to his master. "Come, we must go back," said the latter. "The game's not up yet." And he again led the way to the tulip tree. "Jupiter," said he, when we reached its foot, "come here. Was the skull nailed to the limb with the face outward, or with the face to the limb?" "The face was out, master, so that the crows could get out the eyes good, without any trouble." "Well, then, was it this eye, or that, through which you dropped the beetle?" Here Legrand touched each of Jupiter's eyes. "'Twas this eye, master, the left eye, just as you tell me." And here it was his right eye that the negro indicated. "That'll do. We must try it again." Here my friend about whose madness I now saw, or fancied that I saw, certain indications of method, removed the peg which marked the spot where the beetle fell to a spot about 3 inches to the westward of its former position. Taking now the tape measure from the nearest point of the trunk to the peg, as before, and continuing the extension of it in a straight line to the distance of the 50 feet, a spot was indicated, removed by several yards from the point at which we had been digging. Around the new position, a circle somewhat larger than in the former instance was now described, and we again set to work with the spade. I was dreadfully weary, but scarcely understanding what had occasioned the change in my thoughts, I felt no longer any great aversion from the labor imposed. I became most unaccountably interested, nay, even excited. Perhaps there was something, amid all the extravagant demeanor of the Legrand, some air of forethought or of deliberation which impressed me. I dug eagerly, and now and then caught myself actually looking, with something that very much resembled expectation, for the fancied treasure, the vision of which had demented my most unfortunate companion. At a period when such vagaries of thought most fully possessed me, and when we had been at work perhaps an hour and a half, we were again interrupted by the violent howlings of the dog. His uneasiness, in the first instance, had been evidently but the result of playfulness or caprice, but he now assumed a bitter and serious tone. Upon Jupiter's again attempting to mold frantically his claws, in a few seconds he had uncovered a mass of human bones, forming two complete skeletons intermingled with several buttons of metal and what appeared to be the dust of decayed wool. One or two strokes of a spade upturned the blade of a large Spanish knife, and as we dug farther, 3 or 4 loose pieces of gold and silver coin came to light. At the sight of these, the joy of Jupiter could scarcely be retained, but the countenance of his master wore an air of extreme disappointment. He urged us, however, to continue with our exertions, and the words were hardly uttered when I stumbled and fell forward, having caught the toe of my boot in a large ring of iron that lay half buried in the loose earth. We now worked in earnest, and never did I pass 10 minutes of more intense excitement. During this interval we had fairly unearthed an oblong chest of wood, which, from its perfect preservation and wonderful hardness, had plainly been subjected to some mineralizing process, perhaps that of the black chloride of mercury. This box was 3½ feet long, 3 feet broad, and 2½ feet deep. It was firmly secured by bands of wrought iron, riveted, and forming a kind of open trellis work over the whole. On each side of the chest, near the top, were 3 rings of iron, 6 rings in all, by means of which a firm hold could be obtained by 6 persons. Our utmost united endeavors served only to disturb the coffer very slightly in its bed. We at once saw the impossibility of removing so great a weight. Luckily, the sole fastenings of the lid consisted of 2 sliding bolts. These we drew back, trembling and panting with anxiety. In an instant, a treasure of incalculable value lay gleaming before us. As the rays of the lanterns fell within the pit, there flashed upward a glow and a glare from a confused heap of gold and of jewels that absolutely dazzled our eyes. I shall not pretend to describe the feelings which I had gazed. Amazement was, of course, predominant. Legrand appeared exhausted with excitement, and spoke very few words. Jupiter's countenance wore, for some minutes, as deadly a pallor as possible. The nature of things, for a Negro's visage to assume. He seemed stupefied, thunderstricken.